Welcome back, Caniac Chronicles, Eastern Conference Champions 2026. Gosh, it feels good to say. How about you? How are you all doing? All right, folks. Well, I tried to record this episode yesterday. It is episode 32 of season 1 of the Caniac Chronicles. This is post Eastern Conference Finals. Canes wrap it up in 5 games. They win 4-1 against Montreal. Like I said, I tried recording this yesterday. I got a pretty good chunk of it done and had some issues with the video. Really wanted to get a video posted with this one and not just have that audio with no MP4 going on. So I did some things on the phone. I think I've got stuff figured out, and I think I'm going to pretty reliably be able to record video from now on. So fingers crossed, we got it figured out. Coming in a day late, but it is what it is. We're having fun, just like Carolina. So the agenda today, I've got a good amount of the team stats summarized from the series with Montreal. We'll get talking and sort of walk through that series chronologically. And then we'll, circle back and start talking about the preview for the finals with Vegas and how that might end up playing out. But without further ado, let's hop into it. Canes game 1 coming off of that 11-day rest. Looking a little rusty there in that first period. Obviously, the final score ended up being up 6-2 Montreal. But Carolina was, other than that first period, Carolina played pretty well. They outshot Montreal still 28-22. The faceoffs were dead even, 50% for both teams, and I believe that was 28 out of 56 faceoffs. The power plays for both teams failed to convert on anything, so they were both 0%. But look where Carolina was really getting to the game that they need to have in the postseason to make a deep run and potentially hoist that cup, the hits department. Carolina out-hit Montreal 44-18 in game 1. Block shots went well into Montreal's favor, though. 29 for Montreal, 12 for Carolina. And then the save percentages from each goaltender were a 762 from Anderson and a 929 from Dobesh. It goes without saying, Dobesh was quite clearly Montreal's best player, not just for this series, but for the playoffs as a whole. A lot of people, are definitely saying, and rightfully so, that Dobesh is the reason why Montreal made it as far as they did in the first place. So, it's no surprise there that he had a really good game 1. He had a pretty good series overall, to be honest, and we'll get into it. But Carolina, coming off that 11-day resting period there, is, has their woes, has their slow start, if you will. They snapped into it later in the game, but, the deficit that was created there from the first period was just a little too much to overcome. And, we did have Jarvis open the scoring up, though. That was one nice thing about the entire series was Carolina scored first in all 5 games. And Jarvis did open it in game 1, so that had a little bit of foreshadowing into, that line, that Jarvis-Svechnikov line as the series went on. Whatever happened at that non-ice practice between games 1 and 2 is, if they end up hoisting the cup this year, it's going to go down in famous, not infamy, but famity or whatever you want to call it, the positive version of infamy. The documentary, that comes out a year after they win or 5 years, whatever it is, going to spend some time on whatever that non-ice practice was between games 1 and 2 because it completely shifted the series for Carolina. Coming out of that game 1, Carolina at home 3-2 in overtime. That was that big Nikolai Ehlers goal in overtime there from Chatfield off of the tip pass from Jankowski. Ehlers breaks in on a nice breakaway and does what he was signed and came here to do for Carolina, which is make those plays like that are big plays that are You need speed. You're on a nice breakaway there. He was able to stay away from the defenders, even though there was sort of a guy back. He blew by him, and he just had that rifle of a shot that went over Dobesh's shoulder and in the back of the net. So that was huge coming out of the game too, to be able to split the series in Carolina there. Gave them a lot of momentum. Carolina had the two quick goals there in game two and didn't have a whole lot left after that in regulation. But, needless to say, it was good that they came out of that game, out of that overtime. I think Montreal put in a heck of an effort that game, and that was a little bit of a back-breaking loss for them to take. But they are looking at that come game two saying, hey, at least we split the series in Carolina. That's what we got to do. That's what we did. Time to bring it back home to the Bell Center. The shots on goal total for that game were 26-12 in Carolina. Faceoffs went in favor of Montreal, and they generally did, except for that first game that was a split in the final game of the series, the game three. Went into Carolina's favor, but it was 47.6% for Carolina. They were 52.4% for Montreal in the face-off dot. Again, both power plays not being able to contribute to this game in game two. The hits still massively into Carolina's favor, 46-16, and block shots now are tilting back toward Carolina, 20-19 in favor of Carolina. The goaltending save percentages were relatively similar. You had an .833 from Freddie Anderson and an .885 from Jakub Dobeš. A pretty standard hockey game, like I kind of mentioned. It was a little bit of a back-breaking game for Montreal, but the fact that they were able to split the series in Carolina coming out of game two is all they can really ask for, especially from a young team like Montreal. So it's not crippling, I would say. But going into game three, all the pressure now shifts to Montreal because you do have to defend home ice, especially after taking it from the home advantage team in the series. You really want to defend that home ice in games 3 and 4 and come out at least split 2-2 at this point. But ultimately, you want to seize the moment and come out of that 3-1. And Carolina really laid it on in game three. It did end up going to overtime. We'll go through the shots on goal first, but it was 39-13 in Carolina's favor. Carolina finally had a good day for the face-off dot, so it went 52.2% for Carolina, 47.8% for Montreal. I believe Carolina had 6 or 7 power plays in that game, and none of them converted. Whereas Montreal did convert on one of their power plays for 50%. Hits, Montreal decided to show up in the hit department, and Carolina kind of came back off of game 1 and 2 for 37-31 in favor of Carolina. And then the block shots really ramped up for Montreal, 33-18 for Carolina. For the goaltendings, save percentages, we had a .923 coming from Dobeš and an .846 coming from Anderson. And yeah, like I said, that game ends up going to overtime. And once that game goes to overtime, in my opinion, I messaged a couple group chats at that moment, that game really becomes a must-win for Montreal. When that game shifted to overtime, I really felt like the series was really on the line for Montreal. If they couldn't come out of that overtime with the game-winning goal, that is when it becomes really back-breaking for Montreal, because they put out a heck of an effort in games 2 and 3 just to get it to overtime. You really want that momentum swing, not just in the game, but in the series, to steal one, if not both of those games. And the fact that you didn't get game 2, you really got to come out of game 3, out of the game 3 overtime, taking one back from Carolina, and again, maintaining that home ice advantage. And the fact that they couldn't do that, that was, to me, again, I know it's hindsight is 2020, but in the moment there, and historically across postseason runs for not just the Hurricanes, but teams across the board, that game three, that overtime is really the series there for Montreal. If Carolina doesn't come out of that with the win and they go down 2-1 in the series, Carolina is the juggernaut of the East. They're the team with all the experience. This is year 8. This is run number 8 on trying to get this thing done. And those 7 years, had 3 trips to the conference finals and only one first round exit throughout that course of 7 years. So this team is very dialed in. This team is very well oiled. It's the core is got so much maturity, so much aging like fine wine, I might say. This is the year that Carolina needs to get it done. And the fact that Montreal couldn't take that overtime in game 3 from Carolina sets everything up for Carolina to just close this series out in the next two, if not 3 games at that point. Especially when you factor in, that third period go-ahead goal that Montreal thought they had. Even I thought they had it. That real-time sequence there with Cole Caulfield on the blue line looked onside to me. I didn't catch it. Shout out to the video coaches out there, or shout out to whomever called for Brenda Moore to challenge that, because they were on that challenge, and that play was wrapped up pretty quickly and the goal was called back. So tough break there for Montreal. About time one of those goes our way, and what better stage for that to happen than game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. But that was big. That was big momentum shift in the game for Carolina. And like I said, because they were able to close that out on that nice, net front presence from Aho and the shot from Svechnikov after making a phenomenal read on the, it wasn't Slavkovsky, it was Hudson's pass there through the middle, trying to break it out of their zone. That game is just completely backbreaking for Montreal. Carolina's now blocking shots after games 2 and 3. Their shot blocking is way up. That's part of the reason why Montreal couldn't put many shots on goal in any of the games at that point in time. But Carolina has just got that smothering type of play. It's not just on defense. It's through the neutral zone and it's through the offensive zone. They smother you if you have the puck. They really do everything they can to retrieve the puck when neither team is holding possession and it's in a free area of space. And Montreal just has played so much hockey this postseason. The 2 7-game series for them in round 1 and 2. Even after the conference finals, Carolina still hasn't played as many games as Montreal had at the start of this series with them. So, and then the team there is just very young as well. Don't get me wrong, it's a really, really good core. They've got a fantastic goalie in the back and covering the 2 posts for them. That's going to be a lot of a benefit for them moving on in the years to come. They've got a great coach, a former player, a very similar build, to Carolina. If we think back 6-7 years, you see a lot of Carolina in them in this first trip to the conference finals for that Montreal team, that young team. So I would not be surprised if we end up seeing this group in the playoffs consistently and maybe even making deep runs consistently over the next few years, because it's a very similar situation to what Carolina has had over the last few years. But again, this is year 8 now. This is one of the best rosters that has come into this postseason. Everyone is playing for each other at this point, and the storylines, there's just countless storylines out there. And actually that reminds me, let's take a minute here to kind of remember and offer condolences and thoughts and prayers to the family, to all the people that were ever involved in his life. But, the tragic loss of Claude Lemieux this past week has really added that extra layer of storylines, I feel, for Carolina, and specifically Freddie Anderson. Having been his agent for a number of years over his career, this past week has been pretty difficult for him, and he really showed that after the win on Saturday night. So this is, again, just the storylines keep stacking. As Brenda Moore says, the memories just keep stacking for both him and the players. And it'll be interesting. It would be fantastic to have this team, this roster, win it this year, and have everything that has gone into it for all these different players, not just at the team level, but on the individual level. For Stahl to have, bookended his career once as a rookie on a fourth line with Pittsburgh, and then at the end, as a captain of a team that has been through it. He was here not just for the past 8 years of success, but the 8 years before that, the 10 years before that, however long it's been, where he witnessed how bad it has been, how there's been probably less than 1,500 people on a Tuesday night to watch hockey in the PNC Arena or the RBC Center, depending on what time of year it was. But that is one storyline. You have the Taylor Hall storyline, the number one overall pick in 2010. All the injuries that he's been through in his career, how he's never really quite been on a team that really made anything of themselves. This is the best team he's ever been on. This is the first appearance he's ever had in the finals. He has the Hart Trophy. He, in my opinion, if they win this year, and even if they don't, he might still be the Conn Smythe for this year. And to be able to add that and a Stanley Cup to his resume would just be, I would love for that to happen in Carolina and to be the team that gave it to him. You have all the young guys. You have Stankoven and Blake. You have even Jarvis, who's not so much on the young guy side of things these days, but he's in a very, he's still in a very young career. It's been 3 or 4 years now of Jarvis, and this is his first trip to the finals. You have Aho, who has, just like Stahl almost, has been here through all of it. Svechnikov too. And then you had Freddie Anderson's storyline, which was already fantastic, without this former agent of his taking the turn that happened this past week. But you add his storyline of being a 37-year-old goaltender who, again, this is his first appearance in the finals. Excuse me. Ehlers is an older guy. I think he's about 30 now. And this is his first trip. He's always been on the Jets, and they've always had a really good team who could just never put it all together, very similar to Carolina. And the list goes on. There's just so much in this team that would be Cinderella-esque for any one of them to be able to hoist the cup this year. So that, anyways, I got really off topic there. I'll get back to it. We're going back into Game 4 now. So Game 4, this is basically Montreal's last chance to defend and extend this series as best as they can, and Carolina just completely bowls over them. Anderson posts the shutout. Jakub Dobeš still has a fantastic game at a .930 save percentage. We have the block shots going into Montreal's favor at 23-18. The hits were very even, 30-30. The power plays were finally in Carolina's favor. They were 16.7%. I think they were 1 for 6 or 1 for 7 on the power play. And Montreal, again, couldn't get anything converted, so they were 0%. The face-offs went in Montreal's favor. It was 53.7%, and Carolina with the 46.3%. And then shots on goal, just absolutely dominant, 44-18. The shot total for Carolina in Game 4 was, I believe, one more than it was in Games 2, 3, and 4 from Montreal. Carolina just really laid it on and again showed us they are the juggernauts of the East. What Florida and New York and Boston has been over the course of the last 8 years to Carolina, we are now to the newly incoming Montreal Canadiens. And at that point, it's all downhill there for Carolina. We're coming back to Carolina after being up 3-1 in the series. Montreal is you could see it in Game 4. Montreal gave everything they had in Games 2 and 3 and didn't come out with anything. And we've seen this happen from Carolina in the past too. Not just Carolina, many teams out there. But if you are a Canes fan, you're more likely to have seen it from Carolina over the last few years. You can see that point in the series where the team gave everything they could in games 2 and 3. They couldn't get anything but an overtime out of either of them. And at that point, it's completely backbreaking, and the juggernaut ends up taking over the series, and that's what happened. Game 5, Carolina, just like in Game 4, is off to a quick bang, 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 up 3-0. And at that point, you're doing it in front of your home crowd, and it's not the hush, that comes over the crowd that really gives you the energy, gives you the momentum. It's the absolute roar and chaos from the crowd that ensues that boosts you into oblivion, really. And Carolina ends up winning that game 6-1. Fantastic for Carolina. 30-24 shots on goal, still in Carolina's favor. The faceoffs went from Montreal 52.8% to the 47.2% from Carolina. There was a goal from each power play unit, so it was 20% for both Montreal and Carolina on the power play. The hits still in Carolina's favor, 18-11, and the block shots just tell the tale. 12 from Carolina, 3 from Montreal. Prior to that, Montreal had no less than 19 in any given game, and that was their absolute lowest. They were closer to 30 for the other 2 games. And then the save percentage is a 958 for Anderson and an 828 for Jakub Dobiš. So Montreal gets almost swept out of this series. Got to figure if Carolina does have not so many days off in between the second and third round, that first game might end up going Carolina's way, and this might actually be a full sweep. But hey, coming out of the East 12-1, fantastic. First of all, it's absolutely fantastic. Carolina is humming into the finals here. That's the big one, and we'll start to shift into talking about what's next here. But Carolina coming out of this conference 12-1, first of all, who'd expect it? Not me. I don't think I called a sweep on either of the first 2 rounds, and I even think I might have called a 6-game series here with Montreal. But nonetheless, I did say earlier in the season, when we got swept in the regular season series from Montreal, that I felt this team could still win a 7-game series with Montreal. And to my point, Game 1 is very similar to what went down in the regular season, where there's this weird extenuating circumstance in play that sort of not gives the excuse, but sort of gives the reasoning as to why I thought the game went into Montreal's favor, despite feeling like Carolina is quite clearly the better team. And I think a lot of people would agree that on paper, Carolina should have had at least one, if not way more, games during the regular season against Montreal. But they've got a great goalie. That helped them out too. That helped them out in Game 1, helped them out in the regular season. But once the series starts going and you have to play this team day over day, that's, I think, where it turns into Carolina's favor there. They're built for this. This is what they've been striving for this entire regular season. These last 8 years, this is what they've been striving for, not just the regular season. This regular season specifically, I've mentioned it before, but this regular season specifically, they have not played much playoff-style hockey over the course of this regular season as they have in years past. I think that has really played into their favor. I think that's one of the reasons why they've often kind of tapered out, and sort of we've seen what happened to Montreal, where they just get gassed and it's over. They can't push on any further. That has come into play, I felt. But this year, not so much. It wasn't really until the last 2.5 weeks of the regular season that they really started getting that playoff style hockey going. And because of that, I think they benefit from, quite obviously, they benefit from not having to do that in the regular season. They're a lot fresher. And we find ourselves where we are today, which is waiting. Today's Sunday, the evening of Sunday, May 31st. We have Game 1 on Tuesday, June 2nd. And it's going to be it's gonna it still feels like a dream, to be honest. It will feel like a dream watching that game on Tuesday night, and I can't wait to see it because I'd say after game 3 I was pretty nervous thinking ahead to the fact that they might be playing Vegas here in the finals, and seeing how Vegas has been playing a lot heavier. They beat up on Colorado from a physical standpoint, and that has plagued us in the past with teams like Florida, teams like Boston, and even New York. But they also have really good goaltending going on right now. Carter Hart is playing some of the best games that he's played all season long, all career long, for as short as it's been, for reasons I won't get into. You can look it up. And then also their depth scoring is showing up too, just like ours is. A little bit more than ours is, I would say, but nonetheless, it's and I pulled it up. Sweet. So I have it pulled up. So Mitch Marner is their leading point getter with 21. We've got Jack Eichel behind him at 18. Dorofeev, not a big fan of him. He's had I think a hat trick this postseason, and he seems to always come up with clutch goals. So a little bit of a concern there. Brett Howden, I think also might have a hat trick if I think about it. Maybe not, but 12 points from him. Barbashev is 12 points. Shea Theodore, which I don't think is the Shea Theodore we all know from Montreal. But 11 points from him. Mark Stone has been out a few games, but still has 10 points. Tomas Hertl, Noah Hannafin, their D is starting to get mixed into this. Another thing about them is their D core, just like ours, are very big, very heavy players. So it's not going to be easy. I mean, none of these series will be easy, and certainly not the finals, quite obviously. But there are factors there that I had concern over with Carolina coming out of game 3, like I said. But after game 4 and after game 5, I feel a lot better, and I feel like it's now closer to maybe a 50-50. I could see Carolina maybe taking over really fast and making short work of this. But I could also see this going the full 7 games with Vegas, and I could see it being a back and forth. And who's gonna win, I don't know until the last whistle of the last game of the series at large. We'll see, but you now have not just your scoring depth from beneath, from lines 3 and 4 going, you also are getting it from lines 1 and 2 now very consistently. The Hall, Stankov, and Blake line is back on the map again. Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis are finally getting some chemistry going, getting some pucks to the back of the net. And you've always had the hard work of the Stahl, Martinook, Ehlers line, a very dynamic line because of the two heavy playing guys in Martinook and Stahl, and the nimble, finesse style and speed from Ehlers is unbelievable to watch. And then that line with Robinson and Jankowski and Carrier. Carrier's running around blasting people. Even Robinson he's got a ton of speed. Jankowski's a big body. He's sort of that Stahl. It's like a very similar line to the third line that I mentioned with Stahl and Martinook and Ehlers. It's just awesome to watch. And as long as Freddie's game stays consistent, and obviously the D-core is going to show up, it actually might end up going in favor of Carolina. We shall see. Very excited to watch that. So lastly, before we get going, my final prediction on the series, I am going to call Carolina in 7. I have to call Carolina. I think no matter what, I would be calling for Carolina, even if I thought that Vegas was going to win. But I do think that Carolina will be able to pull this out. It makes all sense. It's been 20 years since their first one. You have all the other storylines that I mentioned before in the episode. It's got to go for Carolina. Eichel's already got one. Marner can get one next year. I really hope that they win for this group here today, because it's very likely that this is Anderson's last run with Carolina. I don't think he comes back next year. If they win, and you could even argue if they don't win, this could be Stahl's last year. I was at my neighbor. We were at our neighbor's actually for the game on Saturday, and a few friends came over. Oh, it was Friday night. Excuse me. I correct that. I think I mentioned Saturday earlier. I've got my days mixed up here, but Friday night we were over at our neighbor's house, and a couple other neighbors in the development were over, and we were all watching, and we kind of toyed with the idea. It could be Stahl. Stahl could hand it off now to Aho. I think it makes a ton of sense. If he goes, I could also see Martinook going and parting ways. It's potentially it for a few guys on this team. It would be awesome to see Aho take over the captaincy after this Stanley Cup. Let Stahl walk. He's put in so much into his career, and he's the last Stahl brother remaining. It would make sense for him to walk off after this one. If they don't win, he might come back and fulfill one more year. We'll see, but you never know. And then on top of that, Aho's just been fighting and fighting and fighting for this for so long. And, Marner, I know he has been too, but he's been on the Maple Leafs. And, I mean, they almost, I want to say something, but I'm going to say a specific way, but I'm going to keep it clean for those watching with their kids. He kind of just throws away. The Maple Leafs, rather, just like to throw away their playoff opportunity year over year. So it's more than deserving for the team that's there now, for the core that's there now. We've seen all of them growing up, maturing in different ways, and starting families. They've all been having kids recently and getting married, and it's been amazing. So I think Canes in 7. I think it's going to be a long series. It's going to be a hard-fought one, but I do believe the better team, not just on paper, but obviously in the regular season. And I just think if Carolina brings what they gave Montreal, it's going to be difficult for Vegas to get that 4th win. They always say that 4th win is the hardest one to get, and I think a little bit extra in this series. If Carolina can stay on point, if every aspect of the team can show up to play in the way that they have been, it should be over for Vegas. I do think they'll squeak a few wins out, and I just hope that they win it on home ice, and so that's why I say 7. I think it could go 6. It might go 6, but then that means that they would win in Vegas and not in front of their home crowd. But we'll see what happens. I'm saying Carolina in 7. I'm going to Game 5. I got tickets, and I didn't get outrageously priced ones like I've been seeing lately on the social medias. I feel bad for those folks, but I did manage. I got lucky. I managed to get into a waiting line or into the queue, get some reasonably priced tickets. We'll be there for Game 5. I'm hoping to do something special for the channel. I don't want to. I might have alluded to it in a different episode, but if you're listening on Spotify, follow the YouTube page, because after Game 5, I might have some exciting stuff to post. We'll see. But anyways, folks, without further ado, that's it for the Caniac Chronicles. I'm your chronicler, Andy. We're going to the finals. I'll see you there, and go Canes!